This last week, I had the privilege of being able to read aloud to kindergarten students in the school district that I sub in. So it was kind of a killing two birds with one stone type of situation. The book that I read was called There's a Hole in the Bucket. And while there's a lot of different authors because it's originally a children's nursery rhyme, this one was by Ingrid Dieter Schubert. So the rationale for why I decided to read this book to the students was because there was so much repetition in the story. During it, you'll hear things like, "There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, a hole." So there's a lot of repetition, and repetition is extremely important when teaching children pre-reading skills, especially at those lower levels, such as kindergarten. It helps with their understanding with spoken language, and it helps their ability to speak clearly as well when they hear these and, for communicating with others. It also helps with letter knowledge, phonological awareness, where they have the ability to identify, count, delete, and change those sound units that they hear, like their words, syllables, and phonemes. And it also, for this specific activity, it helps with their multi-sensory instructions, because children need to hear it, see it, do it, all these different things to help with the younger kids specifically. And they were able to hear the story, they were able to see it on the book, and there was also a couple activities that I did a little bit later on to tie in, such as music and drawings and all these things that kind of tie back to the comprehension of this book. And this book actually is a children's song, like I was saying earlier, based on the dialogue between two different characters, between Liza and Henry, where they're kind of in a back and forth situation where Henry has a leaky bucket and Liza's telling him how to fix it. And the reason why I loved the book so much and why I chose it was because there's a performance with Henry Belfonte and Odetta where they're at, I believe, Carnegie Hall, and they're kind of doing this back and forth, almost comedy bit with this song. And I used to listen to it when I was younger. I had a really big inclination to Harry Belafonte because of Beetlejuice. So I had known it before I read the book. And let's see, how did I prepare? Well, prior to reading it to the students, I read the book out loud in the classroom to focus on enunciating and kind of working on the pace and the pitch of how I should read the story, so that I'd feel more comfortable with that rhythm and for them to hear it. How did I feel before starting to read it aloud? Before, I felt pretty comfortable because this was a class that I had taught before, and the students knew who I was, so they were a little bit more comfortable to listen to me and to pay attention, and knew that, I was going to be teaching them something really cool. I kind of felt that the students were a little bit distracted because they, knew that I was recording. They saw the laptop with the red dot recording. So I'd kind of give them a little bit of chance beforehand to talk about why I was recording and why they couldn't, be in it, and why it was just on me, because I knew they would turn around and see it. And that just kind of gave them a little bit more reason not to pay attention until the computer went black. After, I actually felt that I kept the students pretty entertained and engaged because since they were so little, they're in kindergarten, they tend to get distracted a lot, aside from the fact that I was recording. And they seemed to be really engaged with the questions that I was asking throughout, and even after the questions that I asked comprehension-wise, and which for kindergarten is pretty impressive. Some classes that I've taught, they really struggle with comprehension, and a lot of these kids actually really caught on as to what was happening before, during, and after the story. And additionally, since I taught the class before, I knew which students needed a little more pinpointing and interaction and eye contact, and constant questions to ask and see how they were doing and what they were getting out of it and what their thoughts were about how to fill the hole in the bucket, for example. Um, some of the children's reactions before, this was pretty early on in the day, so they were still pretty excited to hear me read, and they were still engaged, and they weren't tired, and they weren't also antsy quite yet. During, they had a lot of questions and answers to what I was actually asking, which I love. And after, they seemed like they really liked it, and a lot of the students really understood the story. Some of my strengths, which I actually found a lot of strengths afterwards, after watching my video and of me reading. Some of my strengths include how many questions I asked during the story, which helped them with comprehension. Another strength was actually after the story, I had them draw a bucket. So I had a bucket already pre-cut and with a hole in it, and they were to sit there and kind of create and think and draw of something that they could fill the hole with. So it kind of gave them a little extra thinking on how they would fill the hole and whether Henry was doing it the correct way or whether Liza's idea in the story was a good idea. And I was actually lucky to teach them again the next day because the teacher was out again, and I played the song for them. So I played the Harry Belafonte Odetta song for them with the words on the screen for them to follow along with so they could hear the repetition in kind of a more pleasing way to their ears because the repetition was meant to be a song. So I gave them the backstory, they were able to follow along with it, and then they would listen to the story or to the rhyme. Another thing I thought was I did really well was I maintained eye contact with the students a lot. So throughout my time of teaching it, I kept looking out to them and kind of letting them know that I'm here and I'm engaging with them, and there needed to be more of a back and forth with the way I was reading it. And like I said, a lot of the students that needed a little bit more interaction, it really helped them stay focused on the story. And it seemed the ones that I made eye contact with were the ones that in the long run, in the end, actually had best comprehension of that story. I am very proud of myself for kind of enunciating and speaking clearly throughout because I tend to speed up when I'm reading and kind of mumble my words because that's naturally how I talk, is very quickly, very fast-paced, very kind of blended. And when you're reading and you're trying to have younger children understand the words you're saying, you really have to enunciate and have them hear those sounds perfectly rather than speak so quick that they can't really catch on and a lot of the words blend together. Some of the challenges that I found was keeping the students engaged because they were so young. They really, I had to keep consistently asking them questions after every page, even though there was only 5 lines or so on the page, because they're so young and their attention spans aren't quite, where they will be in a few years, which I can relate to with my ADHD. So I'm asking them questions so they're engaged with me and I'm engaged with them, and it's kind of a better back and forth. With the book, some of the challenges was the beat, I wish I would have done better. It didn't seem as choppy and as musically as I would like it to sound. So I think it kind of made them have a little bit more difficulty, keeping up. And the students didn't know the story, so it was a lot of Dear Liza, Dear Liza, Dear Henry, Dear Henry. So for some of the students, I feel like they might have pulled away a little bit with their attention span. Something that I would like to improve on is I think maybe they might have benefited from hearing the song first, then reading the book, and then drawing, and then maybe hearing the song again so that they could hear it in their head a little bit and the repetition wasn't for no reason. There was kind of more of a purpose for that. I also wish, and I know this isn't part of the read aloud, but I did, after I played the song, I wish I would have brought my guitar to kind of play it with them. so that I could do the pace with them and keep them engaged rather than pausing it or missing a line or two because they kind of weren't engaged the whole entire time. Um, and lastly, something I wish I would have done different was maybe not told them I was recording and put it in a place where they didn't know I was recording, and placed it way prior to, and then just kind of trimmed the video so that it kind of cut that part out, because a lot of the students, they were, kind of putting their hands in the video, or standing up and turning around and looking at it, or staring at the red dot from the computer. And so a couple of them, the kids in the back row, didn't quite focus the entire time. The first maybe 3 or 4 pages, they were more engaged with the camera. One of the things that I learned about myself as a teacher was that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Watching back the playback of me reading to the students, I kind of always thought it would be a little more uncomfortable to watch myself read a story and kind of hear the pace and the rhythm and the cadence of whatever I was reading. But I think because it was a younger audience, I really enjoyed it. The younger children specifically, they're just so excited to learn new things and hear new things and answer questions and raise their hands and talk and have that time to, have the spotlight on them. Or there's some students that don't necessarily, but they love to be engaged kind of in their own way, or the music works better, or the sound, or the reading works better, or the drawing or the writing works better. So it's I learned that I kind of have a lot of tools that I can use to reach those younger kids that are kind of all over the place sensory-wise and the way that they learn, which I do too. So I think I can connect with them on that level. And I also learned that I think I would like to teach the younger grades, like transitional kindergarten, first, second, those type of years, because they are more engaged and are more excited to learn new things because every day is new and there's always something to learn. With the older grades, you can have more of a back and forth relationship and joke around with them a little more and have more in-depth conversations, but they do also tend to be leaning towards the social aspect of school and tend to, they want to look cool, and they just kind of hone in on, like I said, the social aspect. So the younger kids don't really care about that as much and are just very entranced and engulfed in whatever you're teaching for the most part. And if they're not, there's a lot of ways to bring them in and allow them to feel engaged. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this project, actually. I read to these students almost every day during my substitute job, but being able to watch myself back and see what I did or didn't like, or ways that I engaged with the students, or how often I paused, or whether I should sing the song first, depending on the age of the children, and just different aspects with reading aloud. It was actually really insightful for me and my job currently, not just after and when I get my own classroom, but how I can kind of go through each classroom, even if I don't have that rapport like I did with this classroom, which did really help. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I would love to be able to do something like this again.